Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. Our guest today is somebody I've followed for a long time. We talk on this show about trusted voices or reliable narrator. We talk about it kind of in terms of reality television on this show, but the same goes for pop culture. And for me, this man is a reliable narrator, especially with pop culture. He intelligently dissects pop culture and what it means from every angle, but also, and more importantly, having conversations with creatives that expand your mind and turn you on to things that you need to watch, listen, and read. He's had various shows through the years, and I'm so thrilled to say he has a relatively new show that you need to check out immediately. It's called The Sam Sanders Show. It's NPR. It's a podcast, but it's member station KCRW, which we're huge fans of. Like we do with every guest that comes on the show, I urge you to subscribe to this show on any podcasting outlet and immediately hit that 5-star rating button to raise the profile of this show. Our guest today is journalist and podcast host Sam Sanders. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'll be here every week. That was quite the introduction. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You just really screwed up your 2025 because you will be here every week now. I was so thrilled this morning to wake up to a new episode of your podcast because obviously I'm in LA, you're in LA, and it would be, we're going through it right now. And first off, how are you?
I'm okay. So I live in South LA. So I was not close to the flames. I got some of the smoke. The worst day for me, a good friend up in Hollywood ended up having to evacuate to my house because he was about 2 blocks from the Sunset Line, which is just wild to even think.
It was the same. I was right at that Runyon. I'm at the Runyon Canyon. That was wild when it popped up right near the Magic Castle.
Yeah. It's hard to overstate to people who aren't Angelenos how much that is a thing that Angelenos never expect. We don't think the fires will get that close to the urban core. And my fear that night was if it hopped Sunset, what's to keep it from hopping the 10? Exactly. I was really worried.
Exactly that. I mean, obviously, we will not survive a zombie apocalypse because we were out. I mean, it was wild. We got that, I'm playing the Watch app like it's a video game, just update, watching it all the time. We get in and all of a sudden people are cutting each other off. People are out there filming it for TikTok and live streaming, and you can see the flames. I've never experienced something like that. Obviously, and also on Sam's most recent episode with one of my favorites, Chelsea Devantez, I've been donating. Now I'm not a rich person, but I'm donate. I'm GoFundMe, it's like a kink of mine and trying to help out. There's a great one, Chelsea Devantez, that I donated to yesterday because of her. I'll put that link in there. But it's not something you expect. But before today's episode that I listened to, your last episode was with the brilliant Rachel Bloom. And it was weirdly fitting though, Sam, because it was before the fires, but you started off talking about grief and the pandemic. And it was so interesting thinking this is the first, this last 2 weeks has started. I'm where have I had this feeling before? Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. The pandemic.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I first ventured away from home, I was let me go to Trader Joe's, get some supplies. Half the folks in the store are wearing masks.
Yeah.
The shelves are close to empty. And I just have this longest conversation with the checkout lady about how there were echoes of COVID, in that whole moment.
Yeah, there's a light taste of COVID in the air.
Yeah. And then I talked to friends who had been in New York for a while, and they said, all this ash in the air floating like snow flurries, that feels like 9/11. So it was just really, I'm safe. Physically, I was not in danger physically, but the emotional echoes that have been circling this city for the last week and a half, that's a little weird. It's
so weird. And the thing that I was thinking about listening to your episode, and I was talking to the audience about this, was that, and I'm not trying to romanticize COVID in any sort of way, but there was this aspect that we were all going through this throughout the entire country. And it is very hard to explain to people because you go online, and I am not begrudging, I get a good laugh from social media. I post stupid memes all the time, but out there, everybody's kind of going about their lives because they know about what's going on here, but they're not in it. And when in COVID, we were all in this kind of really weird, upside down area. So it's really interesting to talk to people outside where they see it on the news, but then when you're experiencing it here and you're we're in this. We're in this.
Oh yeah.
And everybody supports us, but we're
we're the ones going through it.
It's a vibe in a way.
It is. Well, and then similar to COVID, everyone's managers for the most part are kind of okay, keep on working. Hop on the Zoom. Gotta work. And you're like, I'm in a Michael Bay movie. And you want me on the Zoom.
Well, by the way, this is so funny. I think this interview was supposed to happen last Friday, and at first I was like, I don't like. I said,
no.
I had like had an opportunity to talk to Sam. Or they like, do you want to talk to Sam Sanders in December? And I was like, I've always wanted to talk to Sam Sanders. That's amazing. Oh my God, yes. And then it came, and I was like, hey, you know what? I hope I can still do this, but I don't know if it's the right time, and I just am a little.
Smart.
I'm a little frazzled, and I don't, and so thankfully it was able to, like, I'm sure you were in the same place, but it was so funny is that, I have people in New York booking this show that are like, they're hitting me right and left. So I'm able to disassociate, and it helps. And listening to your episode today, starting to talk about pop culture again helps, but it is interesting because it pales into sometimes it pales in comparison to the actual reality. It can be a soothing balm, but it's interesting when you allow that balm to be on your skin.
Exactly. Well, and then it's like you have this constant tension and struggle of like, well, how much should I be doing as a good citizen?
Yes.
If I'm not playing the news all the time, am I not caring? If I'm experiencing joy and just having fun and relaxing in the midst of this, am I bad? But, a thing that I always try to remind myself is that, like, you have to take care of yourself to be helpful to others. And part of taking care of yourself is rest and joy and whimsy. Like, these are all parts of, like, a well-rounded human being. So we can't forget about
Sam, I haven't done that in decades. So how am I going to do that now? No, I mean, you're completely right. It'll be interesting. And what I keep saying, too, is that it's not just today. I mean, these fires are still not contained. But I always tell the audience, it's not just right now. We're going to need help for the next year. We're going to, this is not going away as the world moves on. This will, but what I will say is, listening to your episodes has been this great respite, and that's why I recommend it to everybody. And
I appreciate that.
As we move into some other topics, you always bring up will you explain to the audience what you mean when you talk about a monoculture?
Oh, gosh. I mean, it is just like monoculture for me, which is all of my youth. I'm 40 years old now. So I was born in the 80s, but was really a 90s baby. And I remember the ways in which everyone was kind of always locked in to the same thing. We watched the same sitcoms and talked about them the next morning at school. We watched the same blockbusters and all had a connection over these things and discussed it together. And something happened in the last 10 to 15 years, the proliferation of unlimited ways to watch unlimited things. It's eroded the collective sense of, we're watching this together, we're doing this together, this is a thing that we do together. The last few vestiges, I think, of monoculture are football. The Super Bowl can get maybe 100 million viewers for those games. That's 1 in 3 Americans. But for instance, when I was a kid, Friends and Seinfeld were the biggest sitcoms on
Thursday night TV.
Yeah, and they would regularly get 30 or 40 million viewers every week. Now, the biggest show on broadcast television is the Kathy Bates Matlock reboot. It gets maybe 13 or 15 million viewers, but no one I know watches it. Right?
I know. And that's considered gargantuan now because everything is so spread out. When I was a child the same way, I couldn't have predicted streaming services. My mind couldn't have comprehended that I could have everything anytime I wanted if I paid a monthly fee. Like the whole point of it was this beautiful thing of that monoculture that you speak of, that we all did share in some kind of form of entertainment. And then when you went outside of that, like I remember my friends in Kansas turning me on to the band REM or, something that I was like, I've never heard this in my life, or rest in peace, David Lynch, when my friend made me watch Twin Peaks for the first time. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm going out of the mainstream and I'm discovering something that is opening my brain up, but we still had that monoculture to go back to, and now everything's spread out.
Everything's spread out, and there'll be people and things that are famous and trending that I've never heard of before in my life.
You said this on your you did this great episode about now it feels like 3 years ago, but your wrap up of 2024, you said, "Hey, I just discovered this new upstart here on TikTok," and then you go and you see that they have 7 million followers. You've never heard about them. Like, that is pop culture passing us by because there's too much of it. Like, I sometimes worry. I used to think as a kid I could see every movie that ever existed in the world if I put my mind to it, and then you realize, well, now I don't actually want to because a lot of movies are bad. But there's no way we can keep up with it. How do we do this, Sam?
I think it's like, for me, I know that I'll never keep up with all of it, but my job is to try to remain curious. I am at that precipice of age. I'm 40 right now, and I could, over the next few years or decades, become a grumpy, crotchety old man who says it was better in my day. But I think nostalgia is cheap. And I think that remaining curious about where the culture is moving, no matter how diffuse it gets, like, I have to. I have to.
Yeah.
And this week we're all talking about TikTok, and you have to make a choice. I could have made a choice to say, I'm never making these videos. I don't do that. What is this? It's stupid. But what I want to say is, oh, wow, it may not be specifically for me, but I can admire the craft. These people are directing small movies. They're exhibiting a certain kind of skill. And I want to know enough about it to respect it, even if it's not my jam, So my thing is just like, stay curious, stay wide-eyed. And when you can, try to just create a little monoculture yourself. What I'm doing right now is telling everybody I know, you got to watch Severance. You got to watch Severance so I can talk about it with you, and don't watch it later. Watch it now so we can talk about it together.
Oh my God. I said the same thing on my show, and today's Friday and it just came out, and there's this nervousness and anticipation that I used to get for good pop culture, that there's a nervousness in which that they could possibly disappoint Ryan Bailey of all people, that they could, but there's also this excitement of like, what if it's amazing? What if it, like, there's this in between that I don't know what it is yet. And I'm so excited to find out. And at the heart of it, that's what pop culture to me is this excitement in the not knowing and then the knowing and loving.
Yes. And watching people next to you experience the same thing. Part of why I still love going to the movies, and specifically going to horror movies.
By the way, you went to The Brutalist a couple days ago, or like, that's a 3.5 hour movie with an intermission, which you said you want more intermissions in movies now.
Oh yeah. If your movie's over 90 minutes, let me go pee. Let me go pee.
let me go pee without feeling bad that I'm peeing in the middle of a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it's like, I still will go to the movies in spite of their length, in spite of, the cost, because there's something really special about being in a film, in a theater, and you're sitting next to strangers and you're watching them have a similar emotional reaction to you. I think it's great. I think it is, like, in this weird way, community building. And, we talk a lot about the loneliness epidemic. I think experiencing pop culture together is a good antidote for loneliness. Personally.
I completely agree. And that's why, like, I don't listen to, I focus a lot on reality shows, which, by the way, his most recent episode, he said reality shows are in, folks. So we are safe in 2025. We are good. So that's good news. But I like listening to the podcast, and I will yell out to you like I'm your friend going, yes, Sam, yes, or no. And that's part of it as well. I wanted to read this quote to you about pop culture and get your thoughts on it. I saw this on Twitter, and I thought this was interesting. TikTok is now television. Netflix and YouTube are going to the movies. Movies are like going to a concert now, and concerts are a spiritual, life-changing experience now. Does that have any resonance?
Wow. That tracks. That totally tracks. Yeah. I totally feel it. There's a statistic that's been floating around the internet for a few weeks or so, but long story short, since the early 2000s, film attendance in the US is down like 30%. The box office tallies keep going up because the price of tickets keep going up, but fewer people are going to the movies. And a lot of Americans only go to like one movie a year. And so I totally buy it. I think, like, a lot of the things that you used to just do all the time, you do less. I think a lot of it was exacerbated and sped up by the pandemic. It made a lot of us more comfortable with just being at home more. So I feel like that's true, but it also kind of makes me sad. I watch a movie differently and in a better manner when I'm in a theater. When I watch stuff at home, I'm halfway watching it. Unless it's
Yeah.
Severance. But
Yeah,
like,
well, no, we're,
all
we're
right.
we're taught to like be able to pause. We're taught to look at our phones. There are shows that you have to pay deep attention to, like Severance, or I would say, I know this is going back, but The Wire. Like I would, you can't. You got to watch The Wire. You got to go through the entire thing. But a lot of us are taught now to, oh, I can watch this show while I'm on my phone. Reality
Oh
shows,
yeah.
especially, where you're like, oh, I can do two things at once. So it is important to have that focus. You have to almost like go to the gym and train yourself for
Oh,
a movie
totally.
like The Brutalist, which but at the same time, I'm so excited that The Brutalist is in movie theaters just because I don't want it just to be Marvel movies.
Oh, totally. Totally. Well, and I think that like what The Brutalist introduces is like a larger question for me about the industry going forward. There's less money to go around, it seems, for movies in this town right now. But it's like, who gets the money to make The Brutalist, and how many Brutalists do we get to experience? This is a new story that was painstakingly done and is a testament to like capital C craft of movie making. I want a lot of directors every year to get that chance, And
Yeah.
so I don't think I love The Brutalist. It's fine. They kind of tried really hard, almost too hard. But I like knowing that the industry can still make a film like The Brutalist. Like, for instance, my favorite movie of the year is probably Nickel Boys. This is the Colson Whitehead adaptation of the book.
Colson Whitehead
And
is one of the best authors out there, folks.
oh
Like, if
yeah,
you get a
yeah.
chance, go pick up one of his books. Amazing
Yeah.
author.
Yeah. Pulitzer winner, incredible. But Nickel Boys, directed by Ramel Ross, the whole film is shot from a point of view, from like the lead actor's point of view. And it's one of the most visually stunning things I've seen in the last decade. And so my thing now is like, this may never be a big hit. It's a heavy topic. It's very indie. But the fact that it got made makes me happy. So like in lieu of monoculture, which we're just losing, I do hope that there's still money thrown at people making weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was texting with somebody about Megan Ellison, who is one of the daughters of Larry Ellison, who's a billionaire that has Skydance, which is taking over Paramount, I think. And Megan Ellison, about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, she had open pocketbooks and she was just giving money to these, like she was letting Paul Thomas Anderson make Inherent Vice. She was like just throwing
Yeah.
money at weird ideas.
Yeah.
And then finally they were like, yo, these aren't making any money. We got to stop this. But you want artists to flourish. You want them to be discovered. You want new voices out there. Even if you don't agree with that voice or, in that
Totally.
moment, you see that they're doing something.
Yes, and doing something that feels different. What I have seen happen in prestige streaming is every streamer trying to make their own shitty version of The White Lotus. Half the time that show will star Nicole Kidman. And I'll watch Nicole Kidman read the phone book, but I'm just like, stop doing this. Have a new
By the way,
idea.
at this point, if we just watch Nicole Kidman project, there's enough now until the day we die. Like there is never you don't even know how she
working.
fits it in. You
No.
don't know how she fits it in.
Yeah, I tell people Nicole Kidman works like she owes somebody money. Like
You get
weird.
nervous. I get
Yeah.
scared that I'm going to see her do a Candy Crush commercial like Drew Barrymore. Do you ever get nervous when you see like a big celebrity like
What's
that doing
going
a
on?
Candy Crush commercial? I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And like I think part of why most streaming feels kind of mid right now, it's like you have a bunch of executives trying to do the same thing as everybody else, but make it different. And it won't be different if it's the same as everybody else. And I think that like, in spite of my reticence to fully engross myself in TikTok, it does feel new. It feels new and it feels like it's trying something different. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever get back to a point where everyone watches everything together. But I do want to continue to live in a space in which people are allowed to experiment and there's money around for folks to do it.
Yeah. It is interesting though, like you were talking about TikTok. Obviously, we're coming up on the ban. I think I'm releasing this like Monday of this next week, so we'll find out. Biden said yesterday that he's not going to enforce the ban. So I hear that we are having an inauguration this week of a new president. I've heard something about that. I know you had a political background in this, and it'll be interesting. I think this is an easy layup for our new president to come in and save this and be a somewhat hero for people, because it is interesting. Like, like, if we could harness the power of people that want to save TikTok, which is, by the way, is totally viable, and I love that, and I spend so many hours, and I've watched so many stories like they are these little reality shows of people that I would never. I watch this dude that just like eats a different meal every day, and he goes, "This is JRQQ. I'm eating some chicken noodle soup," and I, for some reason, am so locked into this stupid little thing, but it gives me comfort at the end of the night. In terms of TikTok, this is a huge form of pop culture that most people are watching. That, along with YouTube, which when I was growing up, these two things didn't exist.
Yeah.
If TikTok goes away, I mean, do you have any kind of in your mind? I know you had have a political background as well. What do you think this does to us as a culture here, especially at this time in American history?
Yeah, I think we'll find something else to do. I remember when Vine was ascending. Remember Vine, those 6 or 7 second videos? I loved Vine.
Did you make Vines or just watch Vines?
I just watched Vines. But all of a sudden, one day it was just gone. And I remember the hand wringing, the yelling, oh my God. And then lo and behold, people kept making videos on the internet. I think the lesson of the last several years is that creators and consumers of this stuff have to be platform agnostic, and you cannot trust any of these platforms. None of them are altruistic. None of them are on your side. Their businesses,
they don't care about you. They are making money.
And their businesses owned by men who increasingly seem to be pretty freaking crazy. You know, Zuckerberg.
What? Sam, you stop. Hey, do not talk about the manliest man of all time. Do not talk about the man that has taught me to have machismo. Do not talk about Zuckerberg like this.
Zuckerberg has been, is it red pilled or blue pilled or whatever? He's on some different
He
stuff.
looks like he's an extra on an Entourage movie. He looks like he's literally on a reboot. Like, it's weird.
Elon has been on one for a while. So what I say to myself is like, enjoy all these platforms if you want, but don't trust them. And know that you might not have it forever. It might just go away. You know,
I love innocence, but I also love skepticism. I don't love conspiracies, but I love skepticism.
Oh, yeah. You know, there is a text that I go back to a lot. I'm sure you've heard of it. Cory Doctorow wrote this kind of thesis of modern internet called the inshitification theory. And he basically argues that when a new internet business is created, they try really hard to be really good to the customers because they want you to be there. And it's free and it's fun and it's good for you. And then over the course of their life cycle, they end up being beholden to shareholders. Then the experience gets a lot worse for you. And I used to kind of when I first encountered this theory, I was like, oh, it explains everything. And I'm mad. But now I'm less mad. And I just say to myself, okay, I know this going in. The next app that people go to, should TikTok go away, it'll be good for about a year or two, and then it won't be. And that's okay. Just know that going in. I think of Spotify. Early Spotify, the algorithm was impeccable. It was impeccable. It helped me discover so much really good stuff. Right. You go to Spotify now, and God bless Spotify. My stuff is on their platform, but it's different.
It is different, and the fact is, if you put it just like shuffle, you're gonna hear "Espresso" by Sabrina Carpenter. I love Sabrina Carpenter.
18 times. Bless her.
I love Sabrina Carpenter, but it is funny that it's not helping the artists that you need to discover. It's helping the artists that are already, which is something you've been talking to as well, is the Drake, UMG, Kendrick stuff as well. Which
he filed a new lawsuit.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. So you guys. Can you explain it? I mean, obviously, they already are caught up on the Drake, Kendrick. I think Kendrick 10 toes down, like just annihilated. Whether you have a soft spot for Drake, you know, he annihilated. And then Drake did a very interesting move a couple months ago, I think, about saying, going against UMG, streaming services, saying that Not Like Us was being heavily, like, just, it was like payola. Like, there's no way this song is that popular. My dad knows Not Like Us. This song was that popular. Then what are Drake's new moves that just happened this week?
So the first threat of a lawsuit was basically alleging Universal Music Group, of which he is also on one of their subsidiaries. He accused them of gaming the system to get Not Like Us, this Kendrick diss track against Drake, in which he calls Drake a pedophile. He alleges that Universal Music Group gamed the system to make Not Like Us a #1 hit. In his new lawsuit, he basically says that Universal Music Group shouldn't have allowed the song to even be released because it was like defamation, basically calling this guy a pedophile. In the new lawsuit, though, he again uses the word pedophile. And I keep thinking whenever he does this stuff, it's like, we've stopped saying it. You keep saying pedophile. You keep saying pedophile.
It's like that Achilles heel where everybody's like, dude, you don't need to like it. Let these things die. And then you see him courtside at a basketball game, all smiles. And I will say, this whole thing has put this weird funk around Drake that I don't know if even Drake he has to realize, but I don't think he realizes. And my fear is because Kendrick is doing the Super Bowl. I mean, is this all a ploy to somehow get Kendrick not to do Not Like Us at the Super Bowl? Because that could be one of the most egg in the face moments for Drake, because that whole stadium would erupt, because it's turned into more than just a Drake diss track. It's turned into a celebration in a sense.
Oh, totally. I am so curious to see what Kendrick gets away with on that halftime show stage. So we already know that Drake won't be in the country the day of the game. He's starting like an 8-stop Australian tour. He'll be across the world, funnily enough.
Smart.
But what I keep saying to myself, I'm just like, so like the iconic line of Not Like Us is when Kendrick raps certified pedophile, alleging Drake of messing with young girls. I don't think the NFL is going to let anyone say certified pedophile in the middle of the stadium.
If they do, Janet Jackson should sue immediately if that happens. Like if they allow that, Janet Jackson has a case.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a watered down version of that song performed. And I think that Drake, had he been smarter, would have tried to find some way to bury the hatchet and like pop up in the halftime show. You remember when I was young, the biggest rap beef of all time was between Jay-Z and Nas. And these guys fought for years, and it got nasty. And they were making fun of each other's looks and faces, and it was horrible. And then they buried the hatchet and began making songs together. And everyone's like, oh, this is cool. So I want to imagine a world in which one day Kendrick and Drake did that. That would break the internet. That would break the internet.
Truly. And I just wonder, it seems so personal. And even before the Jay-Z Nas thing, I remember an era of Tupac and Biggie. And Hit 'Em Up is one of the most vicious songs that I had ever heard as a kid in my life, where I was shocked. And the thing is, it is interesting when you play these games. Obviously, there was and did the Diddy of it all, whatever. But like, obviously, these two men both lost their lives eventually. And, this is very serious business. And then Drake to then sue companies. It's like, well, this was the game you were playing in. And this was so interesting. In the UMG response, UMG said, he's trying to weaponize the legal process to silence an artist's creative expression. This is from UMG.
Wow.
UMG,
his own label.
UMG, the corporation that's making money, says he's trying to silence artist expression. Isn't that wild?
It's wild. Well, and also this is the first rule of interpersonal relationships or solving conflict. You really never, ever, ever, ever wanted to get to the point of like lawyers and courts. Because once you go there, you don't come back. It's really hard to reestablish goodwill. And the one thing I've learned being someone who kind of floats around this industry, it's like, if you can keep it out of court, you can maybe fix it. But once it goes there, you're never really going to get along again.
And I'm one of those weird people that I do want people to get along. I like a little mess. I like a little drama. And then I would love that moment of them coming together. I think unity is always something that I always
because they've rapped together before. This is what's crazy.
Yes!
They were on a bunch of songs together.
I watched Kendrick open for Drake in Philadelphia at the Made in America Music Festival, not knowing who Kendrick was at the time.
Yes. It's wild to me. It's also just like, it's so interesting to watch all the ways in which the men of pop and hip hop are consistently fighting. And meanwhile, the girls are just coming together and making their money.
Could you imagine if Sabrina and Billie Eilish were like, I will end you if you come to the Forum in LA. I will end you, Sabrina. Yeah.
All they do is cover each other's songs and say, you go, girl.
They show up in each other's Netflix specials and support.
Yes. Like Billie and Sabrina and Who else? Gracie
I mean,
Abrams.
Taylor lets everybody open up for her mainly.
Yes.
Like that's how
Taylor went to
Gracie.
Beyonce's film premiere. Beyonce went to Taylor's film premiere. The girls just get along because
Oh my God, wasn't that good to see when they both showed up to each
it was
other?
really
Like
nice.
Beyonce
It was
went to
really
the
nice.
flippin' Grove for the Eras
Yeah.
premiere.
Oh yeah. Even Chapel Roan, who seems to have a prickly personality with the press at least.
Which I kind of
not-
I miss those
Yeah.
personalities, so I kind of
Yeah.
dig it. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's not fighting the other pop stars. The girls are just out there having fun.
Yeah.
Which is what you need because like the pie is increasingly shrinking. These artists are making less from getting their songs played. Streaming plays so much less than radio. And so as the size of the pie decreases, you have to share. And it's like that's the way. Like be nice to like pop stars should just like it's pop. It's pop music. Like it's not that serious. Relax.
It's sugar. It's sugar for our systems that we really can get. Like it's a good part of our lives. But you just mentioned something about when it gets to the legal system, and something you were talking about briefly on today's episode. Something that we've talked about a lot on here. I had sinus surgery on the 30th, so I've been recovering. So I did not get to dive into. Well, Justin Baldoni filed a complaint a while back, and I did not get to cover that. But then in this week, during the fires, I've lost count at I think 30 more lawsuit filings that have been filed, and it is wild that this is going to stay in the courts now for years. And Baldoni just filed a 178 page lawsuit against Blake Lively that you pointed out, and I agree with. I told the audience on initially Blake's filing, I was like, this is better than the movie. This is better than it is with us. It is so readable. But then Justin Baldoni's new complaint, we're putting full text message threads from Blake and Justin to each other. And is there room to say that both of them are slightly corny as actors and artists? Is there room for that?
Both of them, I think it's fair to say that neither of them are fun at parties. Like they just seem not happy. But I also think that like as much as we all stand against sexual harassment on a place like a film set,
yes,
of course,
yes,
when you see what Justin Baldoni has countered with, you're kind of just like, oh well, damn, he has a point. His biggest allegation is that a lot of the text messages that Blake Lively and that court filing and the New York Times used in that story to set up Baldoni as the bad guy, a lot of those text messages had certain things redacted, like emojis that would imply an entire text was sarcastic.
Yes.
I take that seriously. That seriously.
It does paint this, it paints a different side of the picture, which obviously, and also then it doesn't give credence, but it shows a little bit more of the New York Times or the complaint against them about cherry picking for their initial article that broke this thing open. But obviously these two people did not get along, or they got along at a certain point and things fell by the way. But I do want to point out, and I always try to point out to the audience, this is not new to Hollywood. Like, this is not something, it might be surprising because we're now getting to read everything and we get to see how certain aspects of PR and crisis PR works, but this has not been invented with It Ends With Us. You can go way back to like Charlie Chaplin films and him trying to silence women that he had done weird things with on movie sets. It is interesting that and this is very 2025, that we get to open the doors 360 and see all of it. I just wonder, and could you speculate of where you think this goes on a movie that was a hit, $355 million worldwide. But I watched the movie finally a couple weeks ago, and these lawsuits, listen, it's not my cup of tea, but I will say the lawsuits are so much better than the movie. And I don't mean that to be snarky. It's just, you're like, I love behind the scenes stuff. This takes you everywhere.
Yeah. I just feel like, all right, are we witnessing the creation of new Hollywood playbooks? So what these lawsuits all get at, Blake's and Justin's, is the ways in which PR teams for these celebrities can just game social media to make someone a villain through the algorithms. That's fascinating to me. And that feels like a new development. And so the lawsuits are one about that. And I'm like, oh, this seems like the new wave. And then two, what these lawsuits show me is that none of these celebrities are above getting down in the muck. It felt like when I was a kid, there were like celebrities who would do messy stuff, but still just like didn't talk about it and seemed to remain above the fray. I love Julia Roberts. I think she's one of the greatest actresses of all time, rom-com queen, love them all. Her personal love life was messy for a while.
Dude, guys, I always
Messy.
try to remind people, she was engaged to Kiefer Sutherland, broke it off at the very last minute, and then started hooking up with Jason Patric, the actor Jason Patric. She had a very fascinating, there was all of these things when she had Hook with Steven Spielberg that she was like, I remember reading like Premiere Movie Magazine as a kid, just devouring these things of saying like Julia Roberts is a nightmare to deal with on set, but you wouldn't get it like you do now.
She never said anything. Yeah. And
No,
the thing about her is like,
you would get like
she never
800
said,
TikToks nowadays.
yeah. And like, it felt like there was a way in which celebrities moved in which they actually didn't talk that much. And now every celebrity runs their own social, posting their own Instagrams and self-facing videos. And they are not just overexposed, but over communicative. And I think that's part of what's led us to this moment. Like, I love a celebrity who just kind of like does the thing. I think part of why I love Sabrina Carpenter so much is that I cannot tell you a thing about her.
I
can't tell you a thing about her.
You know what? And part of the, well, I mean, they're also extremely talented. I love Zendaya and Tom Holland because I don't know how their relationship, I don't care. They're both doing great work. They seem to really love acting. They're so talented. I don't need to know. Like, they just
she feels above the fray, you know?
It's so, but I don't know if that's refreshing or that's just how I was used to it growing up.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's
like
really
the younger generation might want all of that because they're so used to the TikTok culture. They're so used to, you said, we're so used to reality shows that it's not just the movie anymore. It's the reality show behind the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then it's like you end up with pop stars like Chappell Roan who just want to sing a song, having to like cry on TikTok talking about Kamala Harris and if she's going to vote for her or not. And it's like, you know what? I didn't want Trump to win either, but Chappell Roan is not the problem here. And like pinning her to a crucifix to get her to say Kamala 3 times in a row is not going to fix anything.
Could you imagine wanting to be super successful and famous in 2025? Could you imagine wanting that? Like, you couldn't, like, the way even just in terms of the fires, one of the main news stories is which celebrities donated or which celebrity lost their houses and they become the face of losing houses. And then they lost a house. Fucking Leighton Meester and Adam Brody didn't ask to be the face of like losing their home. They've lost an actual house. And then they have to read comments from like Page 6, like, things for clickbait going, like, well, they're rich, they can rebuild. Are you kidding me? Like, you couldn't pay me enough to be famous in this state.
No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There's this level of like not having to always be on, but have to always be commenting and like responsive. It's overkill. It's hard. I don't know how these people do it. Yeah.
Oh, you have to push content out constantly,
all the time.
5 or 6 times a day.
All the time.
And that's why I don't really post TikTok, because I'm not that inspired. I love doing this show, but I'm not inspired to like, well, I'll talk about the latest thing that happened on The Traitors last night. I'll just do it on the show. I can't, but you can tell they almost feel pressured to keep up with that algorithm.
Oh, yeah. Also, The Traitors. Should I watch The Traitors? Everyone says I should watch The Traitors.
If there's one thing I can impart on you today, and I feel I don't want this to ruin any, if you like me at this point, I don't want it to ruin this if you hate it, but I do really love The Traitors. And let me just pitch it as this. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. No, it's ridiculous. You got to go with it. Alan Cummings, the host, is doing a performance. You have to appreciate the campiness of it. The John Waters, the Lynchian, there is all of these elements, but also there is a gameplay, but it also highlights how celebrities can just be so damn stupid. Now, if you don't watch reality shows in general, like if you're not a Vanderpump Rules guy, you're going to not see the humor in how funny Sandoval is being because he's being so narcissistic.
Sandoval's on it.
Sandoval is on it, dude. And
shame. That man has no shame.
And then Bob the Drag Queen is I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but
okay.
I was not familiar with Bob the Drag Queen's work, and Bob the Drag Queen, I'm a new fan now. Like, you have these people from pop culture.
Bob is quick.
Oh, the way that he is speaking. So I would start there, but if you like just gameplay, I would recommend the BBC, the UK version that's on Peacock.
Oh,
That's no celebrities and just straight gameplay. But I highly
okay.
recommend it as purely escapism. But you
Okay.
have to be ready to be silly with it, if that makes sense.
I'm in. I'm going to go from Severance to Traders this next week. Just boom, 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 boom.
You're gonna get sick. You're not gonna make it, Sam. You're not gonna make it. You are not going to make it. A couple of other things. We had
Yeah.
talked about Beyonce, one of my favorite artists, and I was
Yeah.
wondering just for you is I've been so privileged to see one of my favorite things to do or used to do was go to live concerts. Like I would
Yeah.
go, I got to see Prince perform 5 or 6 times. I got to see
Hell
Beyonce
yeah.
perform five. I got to see the greats. I was talking about this concept earlier in the week of I saw Prince perform once and I said, well, I have to believe in some sort of God or higher power now because there's no way that what I saw I just never saw that. And I will say the closest I've come to that is watching a Beyonce performance at Dodger Stadium where I didn't really necessarily understand what was driving the drive. I knew it was her and the talent, but I thought there was something more. Has there
Yeah.
been performance or performances in your life, or could even be something on TV that made you believe like, fuck, this is a higher power speaking through this person?
Yeah, I had the privilege of seeing Prince before he passed. He would do pop-up secret shows all over LA. It was a big deal. And he would just show up and kind of announce the day of. I got a ticket to one of those shows at the Palladium, and I remember him playing for 4 hours. He had a 12-piece horn section. It was wild. And over the course of his 4-hour set, I was like, let me get some video. I did not know that you cannot record video at Prince concerts. So while I'm recording, I feel my feet leave the ground. I start to raise up into the air, and I'm like, what's happening? A security guard has raised me up and proceeds to carry me outside. And he says, you can't do film of Prince. So at that point, my dear friend who's there with me, Shireen, I was like, I cannot take her out of this Prince experience. She's still in there. She deserves. So I went and took a nap in my Prius for 2 hours while she
Wait,
was
so they
watching the rest
didn't
of
even
the
let
Prince
you
show.
delete? They just threw
No.
you out?
I was so I got probably 3 hours of the 4-hour set.
Well, that's pretty good.
Still best show of my life. Best show of my life. But when I think of like what really is like the pinnacle of pop performance right now, I saw Beyonce's Renaissance tour 4 times and loved it. But I think the holy grail of Beyonce performances is her Coachella set.
I was there, Lemon. Yep.
You were there?
I was there. Well, so Sam, the crazy thing was that I was there the second weekend. So the first weekend I was watching the live stream. Nobody knew
Yeah.
what she was going to do. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
the HVIC, you're like, oh my God, she did the whole performance based just for this. And you realized, and then seeing it live the next week, it was heavenly.
It's insane. Well, and like the most beautiful part of that Coachella set is that the Netflix special made from those 2 weekends, the edit consistently jumps from weekend 1 to weekend 2. And in one weekend, she's wearing yellow, and the other weekend, she's wearing pink. But her choreography is so precise, they can cut back and forth constantly, and it works. That level of precise execution is alien. It is supernatural. Who can do that besides her?
Yeah,
Who
I
can
mean,
do
it
that?
was, it's, and I don't, this is always just something I laugh about in my head. It's like, she's so good that she made Jay-Z possibly never tour again. She's so good that he's like, there's just no, and I've seen Jay-Z a bunch live too, but like, it's fun, but there's just, and when they did that tour together, like Run This Tower or something, like they did this tour together, it was just like, it is so different in terms of performance. What did you think? Did you watch the Netflix streaming halftime show of Cowboy Carter songs from Beyonce?
I did. Amazing.
What'd you think?
It made me respect that album more. I loved Renaissance, probably my favorite album of this decade so far. I found Cowboy Carter technically brilliant and masterful, but it gave me whiplash. And I didn't latch to it in the way that I latched to Renaissance. That halftime show made me reconsider Cowboy Carter. It really did.
See, what I love about Beyonce's newer albums since, I guess the album before Lemonade is that she's making music not just for now but for the rest of time. So
Oh
like
yeah.
people will catch up to these things,
Hmm.
and that's what's something great about pop culture is that sometimes you can watch something that everybody loves and it just you're not in the right moment and it doesn't hit you, and then you
Hmm.
can read something or watch something years later and you're like, oh my god, this is brilliant, I found this this means something to my ears
Yeah.
or to my eyes right now. And I think Cowboy Carter is going to benefit from that. But also, it was part of this weird conversation in terms of, black people entering country spaces. And it was this
Hmm.
important conversation. But I think it almost sometimes made the music have a backseat. So that performance was so amazing to see. And I was like, oh, they were supposed to announce the concert tour this week, and she held it back due to the fires, which
The
is the right
fires.
decision.
Oh yeah.
But I can't wait to see what she has in store
Yeah.
because she has my money now for the rest of time.
Oh, for sure. Do you think she's going to announce a tour or the third album in the trilogy?
Tour. And then I think the
Okay.
third album in the trilogy, I mean, I think a lot of people think this, but I think it will be alternative rock, right? Or what
God,
do
I
you
hope
think?
so. I hope so. I remember that song off of Lemonade that she did
Jack
with
White,
Jack White of the White Stripes. I'm like, I'd listen to an hour of this. An
right?
hour. Yeah.
And then who
Yeah.
she co-wrote, like she co-wrote with Father John Misty. She co-wrote with all these amazing artists. Some she didn't even use, but she has such an appreciation for all forms of music that,
But
man,
this
I
is
would.
the thing. Yeah, it's phenomenal. She, more than any other pop star of our time, is a student of musical history. If you just go look at the credits of her albums, she is citing, sampling, and reimagining hundreds of obscure musical references every album. Every album. And you can tell when she makes anything that she's like learned her history. So even on Cowboy Carter, there's a song named Spaghetti. When you first hear it and you're like, this sounds weird, doesn't sound like the country of the rest of the album or top 40 radio. And then you realize she is referencing spaghetti westerns, which was an Italian film art form that was ascendant decades ago that had a different kind of more cinematic and sweeping country sound. Like everything that she's doing is distinctly and specifically referencing something that came before, but also reimagining it. No other pop star is working like that today.
No,
And so even
it's
if I don't love Cowboy Carter, I respect the craft. I
Well,
truly respect it.
there is this thing where you have to like it's Kubrickian in a sense of like you don't understand the technicality that is going
Yes.
in, and
Yes.
you don't, and you're listening to something sonically, but like the work behind that from a team of like really like the best artists out there, it's
Hmm.
really creating something so amazing. A couple more things before we let you go. I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Yeah.
get your thoughts because we talked about Prince for a second, and this
Yeah.
actually talks about something we were talking about in terms of streaming was I was talking about musicians' estates earlier this week
Hmm.
in terms of Michael Jackson's estate. Like whoever runs his estate has done a bang up job. Like honestly, took him out of
Yeah.
a $500 million debt. He's now profitable by billions of dollars. He's managed to put some of the things about him to the side that were very troubling.
Yeah.
But then you have somebody like Prince's estate, who I think is not doing an amazing job. In fact, I was explaining to the audience that Netflix had a Prince documentary ready
heard
to
about
go
this.
by an Oscar-winning filmmaker that was over 9 hours long. They had
Wow.
access to all of Prince's vaults, and it showed everything. It showed everything,
Wow.
the good and the bad.
Yeah.
It was all done, and the estate then said, no, done.
Wow.
And it's never going to be released.
Yeah. I believe, and this is like a fundamental core belief of mine, we only get good documentary work, good historical work on these kind of figures if they or their estates are not involved. Like everyone has been talking about how that Martha Stewart doc on Netflix is so great. It's great because she didn't get final approval. It's great because she didn't get to make it fan service to Martha Stewart. And I think that like the only way you get a good retrospective on someone like Prince is to have his estate not be involved. Because, and you know this, whenever you really talk to folks about Prince and folks who knew him and how he was doing what he was doing, genius, visionary, also an asshole.
Yes.
An asshole.
Yes.
And
Blatant.
if you can't, you have to say, like, I'll never forget the way Sinead O'Connor talked about Prince. So
Oh my God, heartbreaking.
her biggest hit was a Prince cover, Nothing Compares to You. And when she finally got to meet Prince and wanted to be like, hey, thanks for letting me do this, he was a jerk to her, a total jerk to her. And I want to say she was at his house and he like
She had to
started like
escape
an
his house.
impromptu pillow fight. And she's like, why is Prince hitting me with the pillow? I have to get out of here. Like he was an asshole. And so it's like, I want to see that reflected in some kind of documentary, and I want to see him holistically. It's not going to make me love the music any less. It's not
exactly.
I still love it.
Exactly.
I still love it.
Yeah, that's exactly my thoughts. The Sinead O'Connor documentary that came out a couple of years ago, it was very sad because they wouldn't even license the music to that documentary to use Prince's estate. So her biggest hit, which that's how I knew that song initially, then found out it was Prince. They wouldn't even let her use it, which was wild to me. So I guess it's a little too early in 2025, and I'm sure nothing else crazy will happen in 2025. I think it's all done at this moment. There's nothing else coming up. Is there, if we can disassociate and take ourselves to a time where maybe we're safer, was there anything you were looking forward to in 2025 in terms of media and pop culture that you had your eye on at the end of 2024?
I am excited to see where the movie industry heads in post Marvel dominance. I think that the era of Marvel ruling Hollywood and ruling the movie industry is probably over. I don't think Hollywood is over IP yet. They'll always want to exploit IP, but I think they're finding the IP in different places. I've been really interested to see how the new IP for Hollywood are things like Mattel or things like
you were talking about
Broadway.
the Polly Pocket movie by Lena Dunham. The Barbie movie like reignited cinemas like Barbenheimer, so now there is a division of Mattel that is just for making movies.
Oh yeah. And what I find really interesting about the way that Mattel is going to make all of its IP into movies and the way that Hollywood has gone to Broadway and found a mega hit in a musical like Wicked, all of it seems a little queer coded. Like Barbie felt hella gay, Wicked feels hella gay, and so I'm excited to see if this post Marvel film world just gets a little more queer. Because like love or hate Marvel, it was for a very long time just bro coded.
Oh. I mean, hey, shout out to Zuckerberg again, bud. These are your films. Well, you were talking about seeing a preview for a Marvel movie recently, and it was almost kind of like laughable.
Ridiculous.
You were like, LOL, LOL.
Yeah.
There was a time where we were really taking these Marvel movies seriously, the mythology. It's like Lord of the Rings almost. And now it's to a point of like, you're just seeing IP that is supposed to hit actually. If it doesn't make close to $1 billion and sell a lot of toys, it is a failure, and it's not about any kind of art anymore. Like, like there is like a Captain America Winter Soldier. That's an actual kind of political espionage thriller that you could harken back to like certain movies of the 70s. They were doing something, and I don't know, since it is shareholders and corporations, if you could ever find your way back.
No. Well, and it's just like, I am glad that moment in time is over because people forget how long the run of Marvel was. When did the first Iron Man come out?
Gosh, it was 2000. I want to say 2005. Would that be
so? We've been in the era of Marvel for almost 20 freaking years.
And that's for the movie business and to change the movie business. There's a great book that I just read on or listened to about Marvel that came out last year, The Oral History. And it wasn't like Iron Man wasn't supposed to work. Like they had to fight for that. Jon Favreau had to fight for that. Robert Downey Jr. So the fact that they had the run they did, it's like a huge run, but it also goes to show you that Titans can fall. And then it is interesting because now James Gunn has DC over at Warner Brothers, and you see a Superman trailer and it's like, can we do this with a different comic book company? Or are we done with superhero movies?
I think we're done. We're done. And I also think, though, that like we are fully entrenched in this era in which the movie industry is not driven by movie stars. It's driven by the IP. Like Barbie's not about Margot Robbie. It's about Barbie. Wicked's not about Cynthia Erivo. It's about Wicked. And I'm interested to see what that looks like post Marvel, because the same could have kind of been said about Marvel films for a while. This, you can plug in any actor or director into that franchise. will we see the same thing happening just with other IP, like toys, like musicals? I don't want that to happen again. I want to return, if we can, to, dare I say, like a Julia Roberts, Will Smith level of movie stardom, where it's just like, oh, every summer for a few summers, there's going to be a really good Julia Roberts rom-com, and I better watch it. Or every summer for a few summers, Will Smith will save the world. I better go watch it. I want that, and I don't know if we get back there.
And I want to go back to where I get an Entertainment Weekly in my mailbox where it's the summer movie preview and it's a double issue and I get to flip through it like a kid in a candy store. I want to go back to that. I don't know if we can. I will say the one argument I would make is, and this is a half argument, but I have to finally admit that I think Timothée Chalamet is a movie star, one of the last bastions of movie stardom, with his choices, going from like Wonka to Dune to Bob Dylan. But it is so sad because Bob Dylan was all about like, I don't know, this is who I am. I don't need to do interviews, interviews. Mm-hmm. He's having to go on podcasts, streaming, all of these things.
Chalamet is working. He is working.
And you can almost feel he's really good at it, but there's also a sadness attached to it because he can never be like Bob Dylan and just let the work speak for itself.
No, and not in this day and age.
Yeah. You have
Stardom is different. Stardom is different. It is funny though. It's like, I respect Timothée Chalamet. I think he's a good actor. But I was telling some friends, I was like, those whistles that have such a high frequency, like only teenagers and dogs can hear it?
Yeah.
That's Timothée Chalamet. The frequency is not at my level. It's just not for me. Bless him. Bless that child. He's doing really well for himself. But I can't pick up the frequency. Yeah, I can't pick up the frequency.
I think it's, for me, it always just confuses me at the Kylie Jenner part of it. No offense to Kylie. I'm sure she's awesome. Like, truly, I'm sure. But that's the part where I'm like, oh, you sell. But it's not like Zendaya and Tom Holland where I'm happy with not knowing. I'm actually curious because I'm like, how does that work? Like, then
like,
you
what
start
are y'all talking about?
You stop thinking about the art of what he's doing and going, how do you guys, does she listen to Bob Dylan with you? Like, how does that work? Does she like Bob Dylan? Dude, I could talk to you for hours and hours, and that's why you're so damn good at your job. And what is your proudest moment in your career thus far?
Oh my God, my proudest moment of my career thus far was surviving covering an election cycle. In 2015 and 16, I covered the election for president for NPR, and I followed Bernie for a long time, and then Trump and Hillary and a bunch of the others. And I tell you, it almost broke me, but everything after that has been easy. Everything.
Yeah. I mean, if you could survive that, I hope we can survive anything. And I will say, this sounds so lame, but thank you for your service. I was so damn excited to talk to you. You mean a lot to a lot of us. And man, I just keep doing the work. I pick up things from you. And this has been such a great moment and a really bad time for hey, this has been great for me, you guys. So I hope this was enjoyable for you because I just really like you, man. And
thanks.
The show,
likewise.
the Sam Sanders Show, you got to go hit 5 stars. I know you might not think you have to do that, but it really does help with placement on podcasting platforms, and we want this to get out to more people. These are voices that you want to hear. It is like listening to a friend, a smarter, funnier friend, but a friend nonetheless. And so go subscribe and hit 5 stars, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you again sometime.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what's going to happen now. I'm going to make you come on out to Santa Monica and tape the show with me in studio.
Sam, stop it right. Do not. See, by the way, when he's just said that, now I'm like, well, obviously the end of the world is happening this weekend, so that will never happen. But hopefully anytime, that would be, what an honor that would be. Anytime.
Okay, we'll have fun. All right, check your inbox.
Was that